Hey gang, thanks for being here. My name is Ross Flynn. As you can see up here, I am with this company, Echelon Risk and Cyber. I'm a cybersecurity manager over there. And today I would love to share with you about my passion for this topic. You'll see why I'm so passionate about it, but what we're going to chat about is how diverse backgrounds can mature your security program. Unfortunately, I have to tell you a bit about me. I go a little bit more into my history than I normally do, just because it brings into context why I'm so passionate about this. So I want to share a bit about myself. I put up there first that I'm a husband because my wife is the coolest. She encourages me to do these types of talks. She encourages me to continue my knowledge in this field, and I can't do this without her support. So I always like to give her credit. I'm a hot sauce connoisseur, and by that I mean I loved hot sauce so much that I made a company. It's called Maestro's Sauce Company. Talk to me about it afterwards if you love hot sauce, because I would love to talk your ear off about it. Escape room expert, it's a bold claim, but I've done enough to say that I've done 20, and I got a 90% success rate, so it's close enough to me. And I'm a musician. I played music through college to help pay my way through college, which should go under my non-InfoSec history, but it's not. Credentials, some people this matters to. Some people couldn't care less, but I like to throw them up there. My non-InfoSec history is where things get a bit more interesting. Prior to coming into InfoSec, I was a dorm mom, which meant that it was my responsibility to be at the house. There were 16 Chinese students and one Korean student that lived in a house together in the middle of the state. My role was to make sure they all got off the bus. I made dinner, made sure they were doing their homework, checked in on them, all of that fun stuff. And I was just responsible for making sure that they were doing what they needed to do. After that, I was a truck driver. I did that for, I think, on and off for about 5 years for moving companies. So I would put my moving numbers up against anybody here to say that I have done more moves than you, and I hate moving more than you do. We can challenge that later. 20 states and 4 countries. That sounds like a good July for me. After that, I was a logistics coordinator for a company called Tough Mudder. So my role was to go, Tough Mudder is a 10-mile obstacle course, so a mud run. So I would go to the state, whatever state we were going to. I'd go to the setup for the event. I would coordinate with vendors, with DJs, with the course crew, all of that stuff. So it was just event operations, really, which was cool. Had a great time, saw 37 states in just under 9 months, put 30,000 miles on my car, slept in my car way more often than I should have. And then finally, when I did get my degree, I became a family counselor. I was in the child welfare system doing what was called family preservation. So my role was to assess a family. The children, youth, and families would get a referral. My role was to see, can that house become a safe place for a child? I worked independently with kids, worked with their families together, worked with parents. I did couples counseling. 10 out of 10 would not recommend, 0 out of 10 would not recommend being the counselor in that. If you want to do couples counseling, I highly recommend it. Just don't recommend being the counselor in there. But it was a lot of learning. I have leaned on my experience as a counselor many, many times throughout my InfoSec history, and we'll talk a bit about that. But after that, I decided I wanted a change, something that was a little less emotionally taxing, a little bit more mentally challenging, and I had no background in IT, no background in InfoSec, didn't know what I was doing. And when I decided I wanted to make a change, I had a friend that said, hey, IT is always hiring, IT is always teaching, and I didn't really know what the difference was between IT. I just thought of IT as IT, and that's everything computer related, and I had no experience with it. But I started, he said, I can get you an interview setting up servers if you can show that you're interested. So I said, how do I show I'm interested? And he said, start studying for your A+. And I said, what's an A+? So he introduced me to CompTIA, and I started studying for my A plus while I was doing all of my counseling work. So in the evenings I would study, during the day I would do my my normal job. And so I went to go take my A plus so that I could go nail this interview. Failed my A plus. Wasn't thrilled about that, but it did not deter me. Went on to go to this interview and told them I didn't get this, but I'm going to try really hard and I'm going to figure it out. And they said, that's enough. You showed the interest. So my first IT role was in setting up these servers in the Pittsburgh library system. And I was setting up servers, removing old ones. Didn't know really what I was doing except just plug something in and unplug it. But I had people around me that were willing to teach me, and I started learning. You'll hear a theme about this throughout my whole talk, but I think we need people that are hungry for this field and that are very interested in this field and that want to better themselves. And I tried to embody that. So a bit about my InfoSec. I moved from there into a cloud security internship. I guess my experience on this team was enough that it impressed somebody and they were willing to take a shot on me. So I did an unpaid internship for a couple months doing cloud security. Moved from there. I got my HISP certification up there, and that was enough for PPG to take a look at me, and I started working on their IAM team. Did that for really about a year. And then I moved into their internal audit team where I got to see more of the GRC side, which then turned into the risk management side. And then following that, all my experience, my random different experiences turned up into me coming to Echelon. Echelon, we are a Pittsburgh-based cybersecurity firm. We really believe in the, every human has a right to privacy and security. And when it was shared to me, that vision, I thought that was like the coolest vision because I've grown this love for security. So we are broken up into our offensive security team, and those are our pen testers. I'm just constantly impressed with the level of knowledge those guys have. They're always learning something new, always developing and contributing to the InfoSec community. We have our defensive security team, and those are the guys that have hands on keyboard. They're doing the hardening. They're doing firewalls, everything that you would kind of traditionally associate with the blue team side. And then we have audits, assessments, and compliance. That's my side of the house, the best side of the house, subjectively. Anything that you can imagine, audit-related assessments. We do a lot in the healthcare space. We do a lot with business continuity, disaster recovery. I really enjoy what I do. Comprehensively, all of this, we do a vCISO service where we act as a CISO for an organization, or we just lay out what you want to accomplish for the year and how we can help you accomplish it. So enough about Echelon, enough about me. I want to talk to you about why does this topic matter? Why does it matter that we have these different backgrounds in the field? And I think there are a few reasons. One is we have more applicants incoming than we've ever seen before. We have unprecedented numbers of applicants into the field. And there's a lot of reason, I think, for that. We're gonna talk about that. There's really great experience out there that we're not tapping into when we look at traditional means. And one thing I want to point out that I usually say before I get started, the argument that I'm going to make today, I'm not saying that people that come from a more traditional background through a cybersecurity degree or an IT degree are any less valued. Farthest thing from what I want to get across. Really what I want to share is just that we have a lot of opportunities for people that may not have that experience. But there is great experience out there. We really need in this field critical thinkers. We need leaders, we need problem solvers, and we need lifelong learners, people that want to be doing this. We just need good people. Our current rate of growth in the field isn't sustainable for the deficit that we have. The ISC squared shows a 2.72 million person gap in the cybersecurity workforce. Another study from Cybersecurity Ventures shows a 3.5 million personnel deficit. And the numbers recently are showing about 45,000 graduates coming out of college with a cybersecurity degree each year. And those numbers don't add up. So we need more people that are willing and interested in this field. So I pose the idea that we should be looking in areas where we may not have before. So let's hop into the agenda. We're going to talk about why people are switching careers. What can these non-traditional backgrounds offer? What qualities can we expect from them? And how do we support our industry transplants? The first thing I want to cover here is why are we getting so many new people in the field? And I think that's a loaded question. A big portion of that, of course, is the COVID pandemic. COVID has changed everything. I don't have to tell you that. But I think for our field in InfoSec, we are seeing the way more remote work than we've seen in the past. I think a lot of us knew that our roles could be done remotely. And it may not be your experience that you are doing your work remotely now, but there are way more remote positions than there have ever been. And we're seeing it become more of the norm. We have this integration of work and life where it oftentimes now isn't a 9 to 5. It's a it might be a 9 to 11, and then you take your dog to the dog daycare center. I just learned that was a thing recently. You take your dog to the daycare center at 11, and then you have lunch at noon, and then you work from 1 to 3, and then you get dinner ready, and then you work from 5 to 7, and things are just becoming, we're losing some of that work-life separation, which has good and bad to it, but we're seeing this integration now of work and life, so, and a lot of that is due to the remote work. So I think that's a portion. People are seeing that they can work remotely. There's some appeal to that. It's not for everybody, but a lot of people want to. We have the Great Resignation, as it's being called. In November of last year, there were 4 million people that quit their jobs. And that is the highest number, I think, it's either ever or in 50 years. I can't remember which. But it is a very high number that 4 million people quit their job just in November of last year. And of course, those aren't all InfoSec people, but they're a part of it. There's a poll that I was reading about why are people, specifically in InfoSec, leaving their careers or leaving their roles. And the things that kept getting brought up were work-life balance, a lack of respect, a lack of challenge, and compensation expectations. So we have, within the field, people moving. We have this idea that I can work remotely. There's the potential for more growth. So I think that's a draw. And then societal changes. We talked about the Great Resignation. Currently, the last study I read said that 27% of degree holders have a position in their field of study, which means good for those 27%, but those other 73%, I hope that math is right, are not in their field. Of course, me with my BS in crisis counseling, I fall into that. So we're having a lot of career transition. And then the rollback of requirements is another one that we're seeing less emphasis put upon degrees, more emphasis put upon whether it be certifications, just experience, or willingness to learn. So why this field? I think because it's the best job in the world, of course. According to Google. I actually Googled this once, and it says, information security analyst, if you can't see that from all the way back there, is the #1 best job. And I'm sure we can all have a good chuckle about that. But I think there are some very real things that draw people to this field. The accessibility of information, I'll tell you, that was what drew me. One of the big things. If I were to stay in my counseling role, I would have had to go get my master's next after I had my counseling degree. I would have had to get more license. I'd have to go get my licensure, and then I would have, in order to get that, I have to put in a certain amount of hours of counseling practice. And I think those are all good requirements, but it's a lot, and it's a lot of money. And me and my role at the time, I was already burnt out seeing some of the worst situations with some of these kids. I couldn't bring myself to continue doing it. So when I was considering changing fields, I saw the accessibility of information. I just Googled what is cybersecurity? What is hacking? And I found YouTube videos. There are so many videos out there that you can learn from. You've got the John Hammonds, the Cody Kinseys, Professor Messer. There are just so many places to learn from that are free resources, not even including the plural sites. Things like Security Blue Team. Like, there are just so many opportunities. The credentialing is another thing. You can get a certification in this field. Some of them, I mean, there's a cost associated, but we're not dropping 40 grand into or 60 grand into a master's program. There's a level of self-investment in some of these courses. It might be a couple hundred, it might be a grand, but it's definitely more attainable. I think there's also a perceived stability in this field because we're all over the news all the time. People hear about ransomware, they hear about the latest hack. It sounds cool to people, and they just want to get involved. And there's a heck of a lot of projected growth. Our field has a 28% projected growth through 2026, which is great for us, but as we said, there is this deficit of qualified professionals. Another thing I think that attracts people, I heard somebody say it earlier that another speaker said that they were on another team, like an architecture team, or may have even been a legal team, but InfoSec is so interdisciplinary that we're touching every facet of the company now. Your cybersecurity team has to work with compliance, they have to work with legal, they have to work with finance. So what I have seen through some of this conversation I've had presenting this is that people tell me they were an auditor that wasn't even IT related, but they were interested in it because they saw the IT aspect. Or they were a business analyst that just worked with an application, maybe an ERP, and they talked to one of the cybersecurity people and they thought it was interesting. So we're seeing people from these different backgrounds becoming interested in our field because they worked with somebody in the field. And as I said, it just sounds cool. The other thing I think that is very compelling for this field is the breadth of options. This comes from Henry Zhang at Diligent, and it gets updated every couple years. I get so excited when I look at this because I'll be like, oh man, I really know this BCPDR, I know that, and I know the crisis management and SOC 1, SOC 2. I don't know threat intelligence. I don't really know this, well, I do know that one. I don't know certain aspects of this for sure. And I get intimidated, but I get excited at the same time because there's so many different ways that you can go in this field, and it's just continuing to grow and grow. So I think that's one of the things that is absolutely bringing people to our field is how many options they have once they get in. So of course you're going to ask, well, what are these people that don't have a traditional background, what can they offer? And I think that's a very valid question. I think that they will offer a couple things, but the three that stick out to me are a new perspective, they're going to offer a cultural impact, and they're going to offer qualities necessary for success, which is very vague, but we're going to dive into it. From the perspective side, they are going to offer what we don't get to see as often, the end user, the business, as we call them. I'm sure many of you have had the IT versus the business argument. They're going to offer the perspective of the business. They're going to offer, why do these people keep clicking on these emails, even though we've gone through the security awareness training so many times and they still click on it? They're going to offer some perspective into that. When we tell a business function, you cannot use that app because they have terrible third-party risk management controls, and they're insistent upon using it, they're going to offer the perspective about why they want to continue using it. Now, those are very specific examples, but I think they apply to a lot of different situations. So one of the things I really value is the level of perspective that they're going to bring. I think we have historically, and this is changing, but we've approached our problems in a very, just the same way over and over. We've used the same controls, we've used the same processes because they haven't been challenged. And somebody coming from outside is going to have a different perspective on that. I really love if the only tool you have is a hammer, it's tempting to treat everything as if it were a nail because we can't keep addressing things the same way that we've been. So definitely going to bring some new perspective. I think they're going to bring cultural impact. And cultural impact is loaded. I frequently have conversations when I'm in the process of hiring or talking to people that are hiring about, well, are they going to fit the culture? And what I'm not hearing nearly as much, and I think we need to be considering, is not only are they going to fit our culture, but are they going to improve our culture? I can reference a couple positions that I've held where continual learning was not really encouraged. It wasn't discouraged by any means, but it wasn't encouraged to go get a certification. It wasn't encouraged to go to a conference like B-Sides and network with people and see different sides of the field. So my hope, and when I've talked to colleagues from those roles, my hope is that I improve that culture by my desire to learn. One role in particular, we didn't really have anybody telling us, go work on your Security Plus, go work on anything. But we decided to anyway. So we would book a conference room over lunch, and we would do study sessions together. And my hope is that that is an aspect of us improving the culture while we were there. Because by the end, we had more well-rounded security professionals. We had people that were interested in it more than just what we had to do for work, but we started to develop this hunger for it. So we talked about the different ways to approach the problem. The opportunity, I think they're going to, it's easy in this field to get stagnant because it's always changing, and it's hard to keep up. I think in a culture especially that has some stagnating people, if you bring in somebody that doesn't have the experience and they're already in this learning process, they're obviously here because they want to be here. They're here because they've started the learning and they want to continue it. And I think that kind of gumption is the word. I know it's an old school word, but that kind of gumption is going to be a spark for some of your stagnating teammates, or even yourself. If you find yourself, you've been in here for a long time, and you're starting to get tired of it. The young blood, the new blood that's coming in that wants to learn, that's eager, they're going to be looking for opportunities to take classes. They're going to be looking for courses to take. They're going to be looking to you for leadership. And that kind of onus on you to be a leader, and that kind of inspiration that comes from somebody else wanting to better themselves, I think can make a crazy positive impact to a culture. So outside of the perspective and the learning culture, I think they're going to bring some methods. They're going to bring tools and some tactics, habits, both good and bad, which is, of course, a double-edged sword. An example for me, I had a colleague that came from a manufacturing company, and I was in audit. He came to the audit team. We were talking about how to review terminated users, and he said, hey, I have this Excel macro. It's a version of a fuzzy lookup. And I was like, well, how does it work? And he showed me. And it was the perfect tool for us to be able to test terminated users. So after he left, I still used that. I used that for years after that because it was a perfect tool that wasn't developed for audit, but it had a great application. So I think that's a prime example of somebody that didn't come from, they came from manufacturing, like the production line, and they were able to teach me something. Good habits. I tend to think that people that are coming into this field, they have to have a certain set of qualities, and we're going to talk about that, but I think they're going to bring in some really great habits. Hopefully, and these are things to look for, but communication skills, it's a key one, right? We need to be able to communicate with people. They're going to bring in potentially some organizational habits. Some of you IT people are like the messiest people I've ever met and disorganized. And I say you to try to project because I mean it about myself. We can often be very disorganized. And I have met some people similar to me that came back from different backgrounds and helped me figure out how to organize my life. So I think we're going to bring in some good habits. I think there's some bad habits that they're going to bring in, like not locking their computer when they walk away, and things that we're going to slowly start working on. And that's fine. We're all human. But I think that a lot of people that are going to come in from this field are going to be able to improve your culture. You just need to be intentional about who you're picking. right? So how do you do that? I think you look for certain qualities. And I think these qualities in particular are going to be consistent across pretty much any person coming from a non-traditional background into this field, because you can't do that without these. So perseverance, refusing to give up on thriving in the field despite the rejection, despite the failure and the roadblocks. I told you some of my success stories. I had a lot of rejections before that. I had a lot of people that said, I don't have any experience. And they were right, I didn't. But I went on to show that given the opportunity, I can do this. And I see this across other people that, one of the gentlemen that I spoke to at another conference told me that he was a professional trombone player prior to coming into the field. I thought that was the most unique one until somebody else told me he was a hard rock geologist. And some of the most ridiculous backgrounds, but they all share the same story of, I got a lot of rejection before somebody took a chance on me. So somebody coming from that background is going to have perseverance, because they wouldn't be here. They wouldn't be at this level still trying if they didn't. They're going to have discipline, because if you have no knowledge and you are learning from scratch, you have to have that discipline to figure out what you're doing. We all know that imposter syndrome is rampant in our field. So I think that goes maybe even tenfold for people that don't have a background to begin with. In order to combat that, you have to have the discipline to continue studying, to study on your non-work hours, and to really try to catch up when everybody else is pretty far ahead of the curve. There's a level of self-investment. I touched on this a bit earlier. I don't think that always needs to be financial, but I think it often is. I think through some of the certifications that I've had that were not paid for, I saved up for them so that I could take the test and I could go through the course. That was my self-investment. The time I put into that, the money that I put into that. I think you need a level of self-investment in this, coming from this background, to really show that you're serious about it. As The Rock says, it's about drive. And yeah, I think drive is huge. That may even be one of the biggest factors here, is continually motivating yourself regardless of external motivators. There are a lot of days that I'm not motivated to do my job. There were a lot of days, especially coming into this, that I wasn't motivated, but I figured it out. I did it in spite of not being motivated, and when I talk to other people that have done this, they said the same. It's almost like a kinship that we have. And then, of course, the humility. As we said, imposter syndrome is just rampant, but we also have a tendency, I think, in our field to throw out acronyms expecting everybody to know what we mean, and throw out tools or different services and expect everyone to know what we mean, when the reality is, even at this point in my career, I still ask a lot of the time, what does that mean? I think that these individuals are going to have humility, to understand that it's okay not to know everything, and it's okay to ask questions. So the question comes to, we talked a bit about making sure earlier that people are qualified. What should we be asking to make sure that we're getting the right person? The last thing I would want to send you away with is, hey, hire anybody off the street. Anybody can do what we do. And that's not what I'm trying to say. Not everybody's going to be a gem, is the unfortunate truth. So I think we need to ask diligently some questions, and we need to be open to different answers. So, for example, asking them, what initially drew you to this field? Why do you want to be here? You were a preschool teacher. Why do you want to be on the SOC? And that's a friend of mine. And be open to the answers. Try to understand their point of view, and what is it just financially motivating them? Is it somebody else did it and they thought it'd be easy? So talk to them and understand, what do they want to get out of this? Ask them about their experience outside of work. What I love to see is when people have side projects, whether it's a couple Raspberry Pis that they've connected and they've built a Pi cloud, or they have a home server they bought and they've been setting up home automation. Whatever it is, ask them about what have they been doing outside of work. Since their work is not related to the field, what are you doing to learn more? Who are you meeting with? Are you going to B-sides? Are you going to meetups? Ask them about why they're here. What are they doing? And then ask, what's your evidence of personal investment? Which I wouldn't word it like that to them, because they're probably gonna laugh at you. But ask them, what have you done to show that you should be here? If somebody asked me, I would say, these are the ways that I've studied, these are the exact courses I've taken, these are the people I've talked to. And then I think some of the things that we need to ask ourselves is what sets them apart. For me, coming from my counseling background, I build trust very easily, and I try to make my clients now feel at ease with me and know that they can trust me, and that even if we don't know the answer right now, collectively we will figure this out because I have your best interest at heart. I think somebody coming from a non-traditional background is going to have a couple maybe claims to fame or claims that they say sets them apart. So for me, it's trust. For other people, it's attention to detail. For others, it's communication. So while you're talking to them, you can pose it to them, but think through to yourself, what sets this person apart from the rest of the candidates? How do they communicate? The unfortunate part is that you have to communicate in this field. Whether it's within the team, outside of your team, you have to be able to communicate. So something to be aware of is how are they communicating with you even in this interview or this initial meeting that you're having. And then again, we talked about culture before. How will they affect the culture? Are they going to improve it? Are they going to detract from it? Or are they just going to fit it? If the answer is fit it, that's fine. I think that's cool. I would hope to see that they improve it, but I would much rather somebody that fits it than somebody that detracts from it. But culture, if you can find that person that's going to improve your culture, I think that's going to set your team up for success. One of the questions then comes up is how do we support and utilize these industry transplants? One of the times that I shared this, somebody made the comment that it seems like you just want to cater to the new people and you just want to throw new people into any role. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think we just need to position them well. I don't think we need to change everything to accommodate them, but we need to find where do we have gaps and then fill them. This, the phalanx, I think is how it's pronounced. I had to Google it because I thought I messed it up. The phalanx formation from 300, where each person held the shield to over themselves and the person to the left, so they were covering any gaps. Rather than trying to fill specific gaps with just one person, let's get somebody that is holistic, that has a different view, and see how they can fill in some of the gaps we may not have even known that we had. That said, I'm not going to say grab somebody off the street and throw them in a senior role. Just be willing to maybe invest in somebody that doesn't have the level of experience that you would want that you would always want. I know that there are examples and times whenever you have to get a senior person. I wouldn't say this is for that scenario, but as you continue to hire and invest in new people, these are where this comes in play. But I think we should be encouraging them, letting them know that it's okay that you don't know everything. We're going to figure it out together. Play to their strengths. If they are a big-time talker, then let them talk. Figure out who they can talk to and how do you position them in the right place. If they are more of the note taker and they take copious notes, put them in a role where you need somebody that has attention to detail. Let them explore a bit, because as we saw in that other picture, this field is so massive. It may not be that they're on this portion of the company or the field for their entirety. Give them opportunity to grow. And then, of course, be honest and constructive with feedback. This can be really hard for some people, and others it's just second nature to say, you're bad at this, and let's figure it out. It's not the case for everybody. So be honest and constructive with your feedback. Give them opportunities to fix the things that you think they should be focusing on, and help them realize that it's okay to ask these questions. We talked about the humility before. This is a perfect example of that. I like to share a couple practical examples. I got a new one from last night. The gentleman, Jason, over at Black Hills Security, if you get a chance, you can chat with him. But he was I went to their meetup last night, and it was nice. It was really cool at East End Brewing, and he busted out Backdoors and Breaches, the IR game. It's a cool game if you've never done it. It's a great example of how to walk through an IR tabletop. But I thought he was a real natural at it. And when I talked to him today, we were talking a bit about what I was going to be speaking about. And he said, yeah, I used to be a comedian. I was like, well, that's cool. Like, what got you into this field? And he started talking about his interests. And so I asked him, well, what do you feel like has gone from your comedian days to your InfoSec days? And he said the ability to maintain and hold an audience's attention and to jump into these IR tabletops. And I got to say, I was floored with just how easy it was for him to just pop into different questions and not even knowing any of the people there. He just jumped in and asked great questions. But it totally makes sense how somebody that was a comedian that was used to heckling and that's used to people trying to get a laugh, engaging people's reactions, prime candidate for running IR tabletops. I have another friend that I met through a certification course that we had done together that was working at the prison, the sheriff's office in his county. And he had similar to me, he had no background in computers, anything IT related, but he started working through, he was at the deputy's office, he became he was a guard, and then he moved up to leading the guards, and then he moved into a program management role. And somebody said to him, you really know your stuff about how to keep everybody, your physical security controls. And he's like, I don't really know what a control is, but I know how to keep people in and out of the building, yeah. And they said, well, in information security, there's a big need for people that can tell us how to physically secure things. And he's like, well, I don't know anything about cyber. So he just started learning, took the same route I did, started asking questions, going to meetups like B-Sides or Bar-Sides, whatever he has out there. And so he's now a consultant leading the practice for a firm of physical security. Like, that's such a stellar example. And we went to go take this certification course together, both of us completely sure we were going to fail because we had a couple very technical guys with us. And we were the only two that passed because we came in with a fresh perspective. So I think I always look back to him, something that's totally seemingly unrelated, it really benefited our industry as a whole. And so what I hope you get from all of this today is that we need people that are well-rounded. We need people with a variety of skill sets. We cannot continue to throw the same tactics at the same problems and expect something different to happen. We need to continue working with people that may not have exactly what we've traditionally looked for, but they're going to improve us. They're going to improve us as a field entirely, as an organization. They're going to add to the value that your security team brings. I think that we just need to continue being open to the people that may not look like what we've traditionally seen. So just to wrap things up, we already established there's a need for well-rounded information security professionals. Candidates, I don't know how many more times I can say this, these candidates have great tool sets that we can leverage. And just be intentional about finding the right candidate. Not everybody's going to be a gem. Not everybody's going to be exactly what you need. So be intentional as you're talking to people, as you're figuring out what it is you are looking for. Maybe just have a different perspective as you're talking to a new candidate. Do you guys have any questions for me? It doesn't look like it. Oh, maybe? I heard a bit of that. I think you said, what area of security is a good one for somebody without this background to enter into? Is that basically it? So I had this conversation earlier, actually. I think a great one, and I'm sure there will be people that disagree with me. I think GRC offers a lot of opportunity and forgiveness. I'm not going to say let somebody go lead an assessment, but show them how controls are implemented and what kind of evidence are we looking for whenever we're doing a NIST assessment or a high trust assessment. you can show a junior person this is what that looks like. And as you're going through it, explain to them this is what this system means. This is what this system does. I think another one is identity and access management. If you have a team that's dedicated to that, you can bring them in where, and I'm of course partial to that because that's how I started, but seeing how access is provisioned and having people alongside me that showed this is why we do it this way. There's a lot, you don't need to have prior knowledge of a system. You can learn that as you're going along. So I think IAM is a great one. Parts of GRC can be a great one. I'm not going to say go throw somebody straight into your threat intelligence or threat hunting side, but those are some good areas where you can start. Cool. If nobody else has any questions, that's me. That's my email. That's my Twitter. And if you want to chat in person, I'd love a firm handshake and an introduction. Otherwise, that's been my time. Thank you so much.